Welcome to the Web3 podcast. I'm your host, Travis Rosser, and I'm so excited you're here to learn more about Web3 and how it's going to change your business. Hey, welcome back to another Web3 show presented by 1Mint. Today I have Fernando and Greg with me. We are going to do something different. It's going to be roundtable style. We're going to talk about DAOs. We're going to kind of just brainstorm and learn some new things. So guys, thanks for joining me.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, thanks for having us again.
Yeah, so today we're talking about DAOs, and a DAO is and if I mess this up, let me know. It's a Decentralized Autonomous Organization, right? Did I get that right?
I think so.
When I start with you, Greg, you describe it from your perspective. Like, what does it do? What is it?
Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical on DAOs overall. My understanding is organizations are typically, how do you say that, top down, but having a DAO puts everyone on the same level where you get the same amount of decision making in the direction of a company or association or whatever your DAO represents. So you get a voting right based on the tokens that you own within the DAO. And it's basically a voting system.
Fernando, what about you? I know you're coming from more of a business side, but how would you describe it from like a high level?
Yeah, I guess we could call them a really decentralized autonomous organization, just as the name implies. But
Sure.
for the very same reason that it's actually an organization that is powered by the blockchain. So any decision making or mechanism that is set on the DAO is actually powered by the blockchain, and any transaction that goes through the actual organization is validated by the actual stakeholders, right? So yeah, I guess we can be a bit skeptical about it, but at the same time, it is kind of interesting to see how these organizations are starting to grasp the power of the blockchains for their doings.
Yeah, it is interesting because I think the excitement around the possibilities is what I like, but I've heard some of the horror stories. I mean, the one of the first DAOs, the DAO or whatever it's called, got hacked, right? Because all the code that runs the DAO is open source, so anybody can view it and potentially run tests against how to exploit it. And I think Greg, was this in 2016 this happened? 50 million was stolen, and that's the Ethereum block. It affected the Ethereum blockchain, didn't it?
I don't remember, but I found there's a more recent use case, and I think it's with the founder of Luna. Is it? Yeah, Luna. I think there's a DAO for Luna, and I think he secretly owned like a large portion of the DAO. So every decision that was going through the community, he had a super high voting power, basically, without anyone knowing.
Well,
That's good.
That's the interesting thing. So to vote, you have to have a token, right? Is that kind of how it works? Like, so if it almost like shares, I guess, within a company. So, because the thing I was thinking, if I'm a business owner, because I know, Greg, I'm always asking you, should I do an NFT to like, raise funds to get my startup going? And you're like, well, that sounds more like a DAO. But if I was the business owner, I wouldn't want to give control to the entire community, but I would want to have some input. Like I think another example is a DAO is kind of like having a board of directors but everybody, the whole community is part of the board. Like,
yeah,
I
remember another example actually from a few last week. I can't remember the name, but basically there's the company that's a legal entity, and then there's the DAO. But they're two separate things, and the DAO had voting powers on a defined set things within the company. But the company itself is still the legal entity that runs the business, and they made a change. They changed something, And the community felt that decision should have been made through the DAO, but then they played it, oh, that was not really within the realm of the DAO. So we made the change. So there's a lot of gray area.
And it's like then the public opinion could really sway how your organization goes, which I guess that's part of the power is the community does control it. How, like technology wise, like how do you even create a DAO? It's on the blockchain, right? So everything you use is out there. Anybody can see kind of how your code of your DAO works. Is that how they do it?
What I don't know is how voting happens, but the way you create a DAO, I think, is you create a token, like an ERC20 token, and you issue, let's say, 1 million tokens, and every member gets, let's say, 1,000, but you can get more. You get either you purchase more. I don't know, you get more, but you can get more of those tokens, and the more you have, the more voting rights you get, basically. And then you can trade them and so on.
One of the things I saw, this is kind of cool because it definitely comes back to 1Mint, is I know that some NFT collections have then created DAOs, like, and I'm going to probably butcher the name. I think it's Mutant Cats or something like that. This is an NFT that you could purchase and then you could stake it. And then once you staked it you then earned tokens, which gave you more voting within the community, which was part of a DAO, which I think is kind of a cool way to blend these technologies together. I don't know. Seems like it'd be a cool way to utilize the power and leverage the other parts of Web3.
Yeah, that's where I'm very skeptical about those like sometimes sketchy NFT collection, and they make up utility by putting those names, but I haven't seen yet a real like use case or something good that came out of it. I'm sure they are, but just haven't seen them or read about them.
I actually ran with these guys from here, from Argentina, and what they're doing right now, they're not technically a DAO, because to become a DAO you would need to have a specific type of smart contract, right? But in a certain way, they kind of are working as a DAO, in the sense that they're creating NFTs collection, and based on the type of NFT that you possess, that would give you certain access to their utilities and the products and services that they offer. For example, these guys, they focus on giving out marketing courses, for example, and depending on the type of access level that you get from the tokens that you own, you would access certain type of courses or all of them. And so it would be great to start to see DAOs, not, this is just a thought, right? But it would be great to see DAOs not as a means of handling and managing a company, because as Greg said, just having everybody on the same level, there are very few cases or none that actually work following that methodology. But if you start using DAO for maybe more case-specific utilities, such as having a community and wanting the community to become part of the project actively, and maybe not in the means of deciding on the north of the company, but more so maybe deciding on the future of the next marketing campaign, whether it should be targeted towards a certain niche or the other. Maybe on the smaller scale of things, I think DAOs would be really great to start to see them show up in companies and organizations.
Very, very interesting. I like the idea of community too, and like using your tokens for other things than just voting, but like you said, access, or whatever, maybe there's other utilities that you could purchase by having those tokens, which I think is kind of cool. And like I said earlier, I'm always trying to think, how can I use an NFT to fund a business idea? And it seems like DAO is the way to go, but then it's like you have to deal with one of the trade commission. I think it's the SEC that is the one that would not want you to be raising money without following all the proper, backings. Do you have to have any kind of qualifications to create a DAO? Do you have to go get any, or do you just set up the right code, know how to do it, and then boom, you're now a DAO? Is that how it works?
I think so. I think it's decentralized, so you can just create it. I think I was on a website before this called Aragon or something like that.
That's
A
right. And that's one of the
platform to
platforms.
seemed like I read through it. You can just create it, and there's no legal requirement or anything like that.
Is
Very
that the
cool.
one that is like the no code platform? All right, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's like a no code for creating a DAO, I think.
Yeah.
There's another one I can't remember off the top of my head, but so Fernando, you have this cool list of a couple examples. You want to go through a couple, like just
Yeah, of
name
course.
them, and if you can think of a good example, and we could talk about each. You have about like 8 different. They're broken into cool categories. So why don't you go
Yeah,
through those?
this is actually from a blog post from Alchemy. I guess the people from the Web3 community might heard of it. But basically they started splitting DAOs depending on the type of utility and the type of north that they're targeting on when handling their organizations. So you've got, for example, an investment and venture DAOs that basically just raise capital to start investing in the Web3 space. But you might as well have a protocol DAO such as MakerDAO or Uniswap, which are the most famous ones, and that basically allows you to participate in the decision-making process of their platforms. But then again, if we go to the details, like Greg said, we're going to see that the biggest holders end up being the owners or the partners, and usually, if we're thinking DAO as a way of replacing the democratic system, I think it's not going to replace it, but just make it more transparent, I guess, and technological. But those are just some examples of the protocol DAOs. But then again, you also have like the philanthropy DAOs, which are all of these organizations that have some what would you say, like some benefits in their north and their roadmap, such as maybe helping planting trees or a really interesting case scenario actually that happened with the war of Ukraine is that a DAO was open called the Ukraine DAO, and the goal was to raise not just capital but awareness for helping the people out that are basically suffering the war over at their country. So, and I believe it was quite a success, that story, because they were able to give access to the Ukraine to whoever was joining the Ukraine DAO, I mean, and through that means they were able to raise a lot of capital for buying food and provisions.
So just a question on this, like thinking about it, why was the DAO needed here? Like it could be a group of people saying, we want to raise money for Ukraine, send your donation to this wallet, and then they send it themselves. I guess the use case here is that there's a DAO, so people can vote where the money goes. Like let's say 10% goes for food, 10% goes for vehicles or whatever. Is that the idea, you think?
Yeah, that's one of the ideas. Indeed. But I guess it also has another side of it, which is with the blockchain, it's easy to transfer capital. And it's really interesting to point that out because in the whole Ukraine-Russia conflict, we saw tons of banks just cleaning out reserves. Suddenly they were starting, in the case of Russia, for example, I believe the SWIFT organization just ruled them out of their program. And then in Ukraine, in the midst of knowing whether they were going into the European Union or not, they started to see some blockage across different maybe wire transfers or just overall financial participation of people. So maybe somebody wanted to contribute, but they were living in, I don't know, in Costa Rica, for example, and maybe sending a wire transfer or paying via PayPal or whatever payment gateway would have been, in one way or the other, maybe more complex when thinking in scalable numbers. So if we're talking about 2 to 10 people, like it doesn't really matter. But if we're talking about the hundreds of thousands or millions, it kind of helps to create a simple yet effective system to either bypass international blockage or just for making it easy as it is. I mean, the power of the blockchain at the end of the day is quite important.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and I wonder if it ties into this other DAO, the grant DAO, where as a, you know, like as a charity or something, you could, like you said, you could have projects, or you could have people that are like, hey, I need this money to reopen my shop in Ukraine. And then as a community, you could vote which project, which I think would be a huge success. And you feel ownership, like you're actually doing something in that community where you're not just giving $1, but you're going there and you're like, yeah, I want to be part of that. That's pretty huge. You know, I saw some things about in the future, do you think we'll actually vote using things like DAOs? Like, will elections actually, you know, and that may be the case to where blockchain does try to get involved, but again, things can be hacked in any way. So whether or not that's better is yet to be seen.
Yeah, I had the same idea. Could we vote using a DAO? Like everybody has one vote. And that's how we run the election on the
blockchain. And we already
blockchain.
have, you know, if you're in the US, you have like a social security number. So they already have me as a number. So that would be my one and only vote as a US citizen, or even I think you can get a social security card even if you're not a citizen, just as long as you're working here. So however they would keep track of me as an individual. But then again, do people want that? Do you want to be that tracked by the government? I think we like that we have, you know, we're sort of anonymous until we need to identify who we are. I think people like that more. No, I know, maybe we're not. But I think we want all these conveniences and all these assurances of fairness, but then you've got to be known, like, and that's part of, I think, why businesses look at the open source part of it. Like, how could you truly run a business and be completely open to where everybody could see all your vulnerabilities, all of your business practices, everything you do? From what I understand, that's how a DAO works. You know, you put everything out there. And as a business owner, I'm extremely transparent, but I also like to keep things protected until they need to be revealed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's something to that allows you to protect what you have. It allows you to bring it to market when you're ready. It allows the owners to also be the guiding vision, because I would want a board of directors to vote and give guidance, but I would also want to be like the president to have veto power, you know, like I would want that as a creator of a company or an organization. So I think a lot of these things are just, they're experiments, and we don't know what they are until, you know, there's been a decade of them and they're like, okay, this is what they became. But at this beginning phase, it sounds like a good idea. There's some things that are kind of scary, but
I do have a thought in regards of a possible voting system for governments later. I mean, technically speaking and practically speaking, I think in most countries that's just absolutely impossible to implement, not because of the technicality, but because you just finish with the whole game of the politicians. Like their business is to be a politician, right? Like I'm sure in the USA it kind of works the same way, but at least in most Latin American countries, corruption is just absurdly like visible. Like it's just absurd how much they're corrupt, this system. Like they can't even hide it, and unfortunately it's something that is already taken as something natural in society. So I'm thinking, if you were to present this foolproof system, which I will get back on that point again. I mean, there's no way like politicians would you know, like enable that, just for the fact that it would just ruin their business. I mean,
that's
at least
true. It would ruin their marketing strategy of manipulating us down to the, you know,
yeah, completely,
maybe
like,
forever. Yeah, that's very true.
There's one point we just spoke about, which is the security aspect of it. So you probably heard about what the 51 attack is, right? But maybe Greg might know how to explain it better. But basically, it's like
I don't know what it is. 51 attack.
Yeah, the
I
51
don't know
attack
that.
basically says that if you own 51% of the blockchain, you're technically able to rewrite some of the blocks. That's the myth. You would need a computational power, who knows how big, right? But technically, it is kind of possible. So, in fact, I believe in the very early stages of the, I don't know if on the Ethereum blockchain or Ethereum Classic, we would have to check that fact. But I believe there has been one of those attacks, most likely on Ethereum Classic, or one of the sub coins that came out of the smart contracts, where some owner got a hold of 51% of the tokens and actually rewrote some of the blocks and ended up taking all of it.
Yeah,
Or not
I
all of it.
think
I don't
that's
know if
what
all of it, but
happened.
a lot. Yeah.
I think that's what happened on the one called the DAO. The individual, the group, whoever it was, took 50 million of the 150, and that was what that's what made them branch to Ethereum away from Ethereum Classic, according to my YouTube research.
Mm.
So that's the other thing too, is it's so open source. Like, how does that really help you besides the transparency, which is great? Transparency is wonderful, but it also brings in bad actors that can take transparency and exploit. Um, that's the part that's kind of scary, to think I'm going to build a company and organization, and anytime they can come through our back door, and they can look at everything, and they can keep coming back until they finally find a way to trick our code into giving $50 million or whatever. And I know
Yeah,
things have changed, and obviously they completely forked, like a hard fork of Ethereum at that point, but it's kind of scary.
it does. It feel like a good idea overall to involve your community in the direction of the business. But I think it's up to you, the owner, to decide what they can choose. You lay down the options, and then you rely on them. It's like a giant A/B test where the members of your DAO are the ones
Yeah, that's
testing your hypothesis and see where they want to go. And
yeah. I
they
think,
feel that they're part of your company and its progress and its vision, like having them in a DAO.
you know what? It's almost like you could do it like you would do a normal operating agreement for your companies. These are the shareholders. These are the rights the shareholders have. These are the things shareholders can do. And then you run that all through the DAO. And obviously, as the owner, you may have more shares, and that as long as that's transparency, it's clear. Or maybe your shares are separate from that, and that's just like, let's say you had a company, there's 100% and 30% of it would go into the DAO. You don't own any of those as the owner, but you can still use that DAO to vote, to guide the company. They can equally, benefit from it as it grows, which is one of the best things about a DAO, is it can have profit. That might be, I think there might be a hybrid here that would be pretty powerful. Instead of giving it to everything, you'd have some parameters around it, or put it in a
There is a
box.
sample DAO. There is like I don't know whether they already launched or not, but a few months ago I was kind of following it. It was a mining DAO, where basically, since it's an automated process and there's not much social interaction behind it, it's a DAO that is focused on mining, basically mining cryptocurrency. And whoever was owners of the token, from the DAO itself, they would earn they would earn a stake in the actual profits, right? So I guess in a situation or a business model where everything is quite automated and you don't really need, I guess, social proof or social interaction from the community, but it's also just a way and means of kind of dividing shares and profits across members. I guess that would be a simple and effective way of implementing the DAO. But yeah, I kind of do agree with Greg in the means that if you let an organization be fully managed by people, it might not be the best idea. I mean, I guess it depends on your niche, right, and your audience, and whether if they are trained and they know what they're doing, or if they're just playing around. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's an interesting use case. Yeah,
it's about intentions too. As long as everybody had good intentions, it would work great. It's when you have bad actors that come in with bad intentions, like you said, they're screwing around or they're trying to steal. That's when things get really scary. I think the ability to share profit is really cool. The fact that you could easily create a vehicle that these people came in and they are involved in this, whether they put money in or they put time in, or they're just out there as one of your customers. Like my background in software, we always had affiliates and we paid them every time they sent us customers. That would be kind of a cool way, is have an affiliate program where as they send you more customers, they earn more tokens in the DAO. You know,
that's actually a pretty good idea.
I mean, think about when you go to like especially here, like they have Chuck E. Cheese, you know, it's like a kids pizza place where you take your kids and they play the video games and they have little tokens, you know, and then they earn tickets. Like there's so much gamification that this could do in business, where you could reward behavior, you know, you could reward, it's like the GameFi stuff we talked about in one of our last episode, but with a lot more cool things, you know, like voting rights is huge. The ability for the DAO can do things, you know, automated, like, which I didn't really understand. Some of the examples I saw on YouTube were way over my head, but it can actually do things within the organization, which is cool. And then to share profit. Everybody wants that. Everybody wants to be part of something, invest in the next, you know, whatever it is, Uber or Facebook or whatever. So
I want to share an idea that I had, and let me know what you think.
all right.
So when I was thinking about this episode, I was thinking about just DAOs in general and where we could use it. And it led me to something else that's a little different. So when you form a company, you issue, let's say, 10 million shares. And what if instead of creating 10 million shares, you create 10 million tokens, right? And as you join the company, there's usually a vesting schedule. When you join a startup, you get, I don't know, 1,000 tokens or shares after the first year, and you get more over time. But I was in those shoes a really long time ago, and you have shares that vest, but they're not really concrete. You can't really do anything with them. And if you want to do something, you need to involve lawyers, and you don't want to do that. That's a pain. And I wanted a way to, or I was more thinking about Robinhood, how they democratize investing and buying stocks, like things like that. What if every startups had a token, and as an employee, when you vest your tokens, you can put them on the market, and that creates a demand and supply and demand of private entities, and it would allow you to invest in private entities, basically, in private companies.
Okay, that's huge. Let me just take a step back. That's huge. So in your past, you worked for some of the big guys. I think you said it before. You had some of the bigger companies. Let's say that you got tokens as an employee. You're saying that then you could take those and resell those out to the public potentially. You would lose those, but you could kind of cash in. That's pretty cool.
So it already, like, you can already do that. There are places where you can sell your shares, but to buy those shares, you need to be an investor, and to be an investor, that's a legal entity to be an investor. And
like an accredited investor, you have to have a certain amount of money. Like
you need like $1 million.
That's not easy.
You need $1 million or something. But what if all this was open? You could basically have Robinhood-ish to invest in private companies, like Instacart that's not public yet, or Facebook before it was public, and you were an employee and you wanted to sell a bit of your shares because you don't know what the company is going to be next year or 5 years. You could cash out some of it, and you can invest it. Yeah.
That's a great idea.
It's a great idea, but I think it's way too early to build. We should think about it.
Someone's listening to this and they're like, "Oh my God, I'm going to do that." So, or maybe we're going to go do that right now.
There is a guy that one time just popped up in one of my social media platforms. I don't know whether Instagram, I think it was TikTok, I believe. And with his friends, they partner up and they were working. Again, we would have to see if they already launched or not. Last time I saw, they were just bringing in capital to develop the product in a scalable way. But basically, the idea is something similar that what Greg was mentioning, but adding another factor, which is the buying of the product. So let's just say that you go to Starbucks, for example. Every time you buy a coffee at Starbucks, you would earn like a percentage of the stock of Starbucks. And then you would start to, in your wallet or whatever, obviously this was not Web3, this was actually Web2 technology. So careful there. Every time you would buy a coffee, today we would be saying that you would get an NFT in return, right? But essentially in the DAO, you would be getting like a Starbucks token in return as a piece of the share of the company. Because at the end of the day, just buying the product of the company, in a way, it is kind of like buying a piece of the company, right? So it's funny that you mention it because there's a lot of room for development there.
Yeah, I would think
there's a company like that in the US. I can't remember the name, but when you buy at Starbucks using their app, they round up the number. So if it's $4.50, you'll spend $5, and they take those 50 cents and they invest it in the stock market. I don't know if they invested in the company that you just purchased the thing, but they invest the cents
That's nice.
in an index or something.
Yeah, maybe by the end of the year you had, I don't know, like $500 in stock or something like that, even more.
Yeah. Or you just take your change roundup. That is a good idea. Loyalty programs, though, that's huge. That's another one where you could have. I order way too much Starbucks pretty much daily. I had the stock. I don't have the stock right now. I've shifted some things over, but to be able to earn something tangible would be kind of cool. I mean, you earn these little stars that you can use every once in a while, like normal loyalty programs, but to have something that had value, that would be interesting. Or it's a DAO. I have so much that I'm actually able to influence the company. I'm like, I want the plastic straws.
I order
back,
so many coffees.
Yeah, that I get to vote on the next Christmas cup or whatever they're going to do that they want to put out there. That's the thing about it. I think a controlled DAO in a community is a great idea. I think unfortunately a lot of the examples you see, they're very utopian, like it's everything's perfect, everybody's voting for everything. That may work in some situations, but
yeah, maybe we're
adding these things.
Maybe we're just looking in the wrong direction, because so far we've been talking about a business to customer perspective or a business to user perspective. But what about if we think about a franchise where you got the main branch and then you got the sub branches? I mean, that kind of maybe might make a bit more of sense, because then you would have sub companies, the franchise that kind of answer to the main branch, the main corporation. But having a DAO model will allow to create a culture, I guess, inside of the franchise model, and having people just to work in the same direction. It would only make sense to give them the power of choice, right? Because at the end of the day, when you open a franchise, you kind of give in some of the ownership of the business to other people, right? So maybe it's a matter of perspective, I guess. We could be talking about maybe tackling different type of models, not just business to customer or organization to user.
Yeah, that's true. Well, you know what another DAO is in the US for the president election is the Electoral College. Like how each state has a different, and they always want to argue this every time there's an election. So each state has a different amount of votes based on the population. So like New York has a lot of votes, California has a lot of votes, and then like South Dakota only has like a couple votes. And it's funny how that's kind of what the original DAO was, I guess. And every single year they want to like change that. They're like, this doesn't fair. But then if you look back why they do it and all the explanation, like who knows, this is probably going to get into politics one day. It's definitely going to get into businesses, definitely consumer stuff. There's so many benefits. Your idea for startups is huge. For a startup employee that is vesting and earning shares that then can get benefits by having those shares, maybe within the company. I now have so many shares I've earned, so I get more of something. But then if I wanted to, I could put some of these on the market and sell them. That's and that the buyer still probably couldn't do anything with it yet. They just have a piece of your pie, basically. And then when IPOs or the next liquidity event, whatever happens, all of a sudden those shares are jackpot. I saw a commercial on social media for something like that, where you could like sell your shares early. It was like a little ad on Instagram or something. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, where you can kind of get out of your shares. It reminds me too of like, if you owe money, like a note, people can buy other people's notes, like, you ever heard of that market before? So if you owe like $10,000, someone can go buy that note, and then now they're the holder of that note. I don't know. It's all these secondary markets with all these ideas. So
yeah,
very cool. Well, we've covered a lot. This has been interesting. I've learned a lot. We've even discovered a brand new business here for somebody listening to this. This may be the next. This is a big one. This is not a small one. This would be like I don't want to say a PayPal, but like it's definitely a Robinhood size company. Something where it's financial, it's Web3, it's blockchain. So who knows? Either we're gonna collectively as a group, the three of us, build that company, or someone listening to this is gonna build it and then bring us on as advisors and give us those first token shares.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Awesome. Any closing thoughts, guys, about what we talked about? What do you think?
I think it's still day one of crypto. We have no idea. I wish I could jump 2 years, 3 years from now and see where we are. I think it's exciting.
Definitely. Fernando, what about you?
Yeah, I feel the same way, man. I mean, it's still early. The ground is so fertile. These DAO things, as we said, we should, look at them with carefulness, just with ease, just like any other Web3 crypto related asset. Just do your due diligence, study, make things well. Don't just go into the first thing you see, and then, take your time to actually investigate. And I think that's the only way we can make the Web3 space grow.
Yeah. It's an exciting time to be alive. I think we're going through one of those phases with technology that's exciting. It's a little scary. There's a little adrenaline rush, but it's exciting, the new thing. So awesome, guys. Thank you very much for being on the show today as a group. I think we did a good job as a roundtable.
All right. Thanks to you, Travis. Always a
pleasure. Good job, everyone.
All right, guys. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time. This episode of the Web3 Show is brought to you by 1Mint. Make sure you visit onemint.io to see all the amazing technology they're developing.